We are here at Notre Dame Stadium, the site of Friday night's college football playoff first-round matchup, the first of its kind, Jack, with the Fighting Irish hosting the Indiana Hoosiers, an intrastate matchup with all eyes on this matchup because it is a standalone game on Friday. This is the site of it. Jack, so much is going to happen in this thing, but what are you kind of looking at first? What is maybe a matchup that might define this football game?
Yeah, I'm looking at how Notre Dame might attack the Indiana defense because that is the group that I feel like is more schedule proof. That's the group that, in researching this Indiana team, I feel like is a little more for real. That the defense that they throw out there. It's led by the front, and they have one of the best run defense in terms of both yards per game. Of course, yards per game because they're winning in every game. But more importantly, yards per carry. They're one of the best rushing efficiency defense in the country. We've seen Notre Dame, again, obviously a much worse team, but against a Stanford team, for example, that was probably in the top 20 in defending the run, bottom 20 defending the pass. We've seen Notre Dame try to attack that defense by passing to set up the run, doing a lot of their RPO game, throwing a lot early to kind of soften up that defense to set up the run game with Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and Riley Leonard. I would look for Notre Dame to do that in this one as well.
Yeah, for Notre Dame offensively, you're not going to be who you're not, even in this game, right? Even though Indiana has, like you said, by a lot of accounts, the best rush defense in college football now. A lot of that is opponent-driven, but it's also personnel-driven. There's a lot of transfers. There's some transfers up front for this Indiana defense who are going to try to make their claim and kind of dictate terms of this football game. But I look at it the other way. A Notre Dame offensive line that ended up being a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award. On your home field, you can dictate the terms of this football game. A running back in Jeremiah Love, who's arguably one of the best in the nation for our money. He is one of those best running backs in the nation. Can dictate the terms of this game. You mentioned Riley Leonard's run game. He can do some things that kind of just dominate the way this game flows. So I'm looking at that absolutely. On the other side of the ball, I'm trying to look at a Notre Dame team that wants to dominate up front as well. And that's kind of the thing that you're looking at if you're a Fighting Irish fan. Can the Irish do that? Can Howard Cross coming back and playing for the first time since November 9th make a difference for a Notre Dame rush defense that ranks around 50? I mean, if Indiana's up around number one, by all accounts, Notre Dame is around 50 in terms of yards per carry allowed and total yards per game. What's going to be different? Why can Notre Dame stop this Indiana offense?
Well, I think it starts in the interior with Howard Cross and Riley Mills. It is so huge to get full-strength Howard Cross back for this game for Notre Dame. When Indiana struggled, they struggled for two things. Number one, it was against Michigan. They struggled with those big interior defensive linemen, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. That was a big problem for the Indiana interior offensive line. Notre Dame's duo probably isn't quite at that level, but it's the notch below. It is right up there with Michigan's, with Cross and Mills. That those guys are going to need to clog up the middle. Indiana loves to run their RPO game as well with Justice Ellison, the running back, Curtis Rourke, the quarterback. That doesn't work if the middle is clogged up like that. So I'm looking for them to stand out. If Notre Dame gets Indiana into those third and long situations, look for them to kind of run that Ohio State blitz strategy that they did. A lot of delayed blitzes, like Curtis Rourke will see pressure coming from one angle. He'll try to spin out of it. He's not a good runner. He's a great thrower of the football, not very mobile, but he'll try to spin out of pressure with those delayed blitzes that Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles ran. He kind of spun out and went right into the face of another blitzer. So until Indiana proves that they have a counter to that in passing downs, and Rourke proves he can adjust, look for Golden to be at the top of his scheming game this week.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an Indiana game if we weren't talking about Curtis Rourke. It wouldn't be a Notre Dame game if we weren't talking about Notre Dame's collection of secondary players that have really made, for the last couple of years, this Notre Dame defense one of the best in the nation at defending the pass. And I get it. That does start up front with Howard Cross and Riley Mills. We mentioned them earlier in trying to defend the Indiana run, but what they do in disrupting opposing offenses' pass games cannot be overlooked because it really helps out guys like Xavier Watts, Christian Gray. Adon Schuler has been a revelation as a sophomore. I think Jordan Clark has been really good in the nickel corner spot. And then you got guys like Rod Hurd who are coming in off the bench, off the sideline, and doing their part as well. So, Jack, am I seeing this wrong where I truly believe Notre Dame has the personnel, even missing Benjamin Morrison, even with Jaden Mickey transferring out, Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Xavier Watts, and the people back there on the back end, I think this is a matchup that favors the Fighting Irish, especially in cold conditions. It's not freezing out here, but it's going to be even colder on Friday night when Indiana and Curtis Rourke try to throw the ball. I think Notre Dame has the edge.
Yeah, it is. The one qualification I'll make with that is that Indiana, when Rourke has time and it can get those back shoulder throws, some of those slants. Elijah Surratt is one of the receivers who really stands out. He and Rourke have great chemistry on those back shoulder throws. Those can be kind of defensive back proof if the quarterback and receiver are on the same page. So again, the big key here is Rourke given time, because if he is, he can stand in there and he can make some incredibly accurate throws. If he's not, he's in trouble. So I think everything starts up front on both sides of the ball. And I want to talk a little bit about how Notre Dame's offensive line matches up against Indiana's defensive line too.
Yeah, the last thing that I'll say on this last point is I think Curtis Rourke is his kryptonite, his Achilles heel, whatever you want to call it, is, and you mentioned it perfectly with what Ohio State did, pressure him. Because, yeah, maybe he can step out of one look if someone's coming at him, but if he steps into another, I think he gets into a little bit of trouble. He's not the same quarterback that he is when he's under duress as opposed to when he has time. So you hit the nail on the head there. You mentioned Notre Dame's offensive line versus Indiana's defensive line. Are we going running game here, holding up against the pass rush? What do you think defines that?
I was going more pass rush because Indiana has the best defensive lineman, best pass rusher Notre Dame's going to face since the Nick Scortons and Ashton Gelatis of the world. A guy named Mikhail Kamara, one of the many guys that Kurt Signetti, the Indiana coach, brought over from James Madison. He's had a fantastic season, All-American caliber, in my opinion, one of the top 5 in quarterback pressures. I think he had 59 in the regular season, which is tied with Gelati. I love the progress that Anthony Knapp has made, and obviously Emil Wagner has been a rock all season for this offensive line, but they haven't seen someone at the caliber of Mikhail Kamara since week 5, week 1. So I'm really interested to see how Knapp can hold up against him. I have confidence that he can do well because he's gotten better every week this season. But that's the big matchup. I don't know. I don't want necessarily to say concern. That's what I'm really interested to see how Notre Dame handles that.
Riley Leonard handled it really well against Texas A&M, and I think that's an X factor in this game. Yeah. He just doesn't take sacks. It doesn't matter how good these guys are that are trying to go after his head, basically. He gets out of there, he makes a play. Even if throwing away the ball is the right play, he tends to do that very well. So I like the fact that you mentioned the Texas A&M game because we're going to spin this around to predictions now. I think Notre Dame is in a close one, a tough one, for every reason that you mentioned about Indiana. Texas A&M, sort of the same thing. They're a good football team. They won 8 games. They have good personnel. Indiana has good personnel, better than the Hoosiers have had in a long time. But I think Notre Dame has better personnel. And I think when it comes time to win this football game in the second half, just like Notre Dame did against Texas A&M, they're going to be able to do that at home here today, or on Friday, against Indiana. I'm going with a similar margin of victory that Notre Dame had against Texas A&M. I've got Notre Dame 28, Indiana 17. Eventually it gets to a point, like in that Texas A&M game, where you're able to, with 2 or 3 minutes left, be able to say, you know what, Notre Dame won this football game, and the Fighting Irish are moving on.
Yeah, my pick might be a little high scoring, but it's 31-21 Notre Dame. I like the A&M comparison. I think it'll be a little bit more high scoring than that because of Notre Dame's losses on defense and just how far its offense has come over the course of the season. The X factor to me, weather wise at least, is it's hard to get and maintain tackling angles on a slick surface if there's weather in the area, if it snows, if there's rain, like freezing rain earlier in the day. I like the way that Jeremiah Love can the way he deletes some tackling angles. Price too, Leonard too, but especially Jeremiah Love, the way he can just go from 0 to 60. That absolutely on a wet surface favors the offense in the run game, and I think that's going to put Notre Dame over the top.
All right, we heard it from us. You're going to hear it from a lot of other people in the days leading up to this Notre Dame versus Indiana game. We can't wait to be here in South Bend on Friday night to cover that game. But in the meantime, definitely stay at this Blue and Gold YouTube channel and go to blueandgold.com for all of the college football playoff coverage that you so desperately need. And we'll see you guys on Friday.